All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good friend Robin Jacks. Robin is an activist for NoBoston2024, which you can find at bostonagainstolympics.bid. You can also find them on Twitter at @no_Boston2024. You can follow her personally on Twitter at @CalkTheWagon. Robin, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so Robin, most people know that Boston got the American bid for 2024 Olympics here. Most people in Boston are pretty much against this, but so if people aren't, let people know, why should we oppose the Boston 2024 Olympics bid?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, we could parse down the history of the Olympics in any city, the mass displacement that happens, the supposed economic benefit that happens that very rarely, if ever, happens, the risk that's being taken, what it does to communities. But bottom line for Boston is that they have this bid that they submitted to the USOC that was accepted, and apparently it was better than 3 other American cities, D.C., San Francisco, and L.A., but we aren't allowed to see it as a people. We weren't allowed to be a part of creating the bid. We aren't allowed to see what's in it, and they have to submit another one in September on behalf of the entire United States, and we aren't able to be a part of that process either. So for me, the bottom line is no matter what's in that bid, we can't see it, we don't know, and therefore, how could we support something like this?
Absolutely. Well, let's again, like we just did a quick pass by of a lot of these issues. Let's dig into them kind of one by one here. So let's talk a little bit just about the history, because really, when the Olympics go to a city, across the globe, the city always loses money. And no matter what the organizers actually say, it's pretty much a bad deal all around. So let's dig into the history and how it actually has affected cities across the globe.
Sure. I mean, that's a really big question. We could spend an hour or two talking about that and still not even touch on a lot of the details there. So one thing they've been doing, they've been having Boston 2024, which, by the way, is a private nonprofit organization, although there's a lot of city overlap. So that's kind of tricky. But they've been having these community meetings, or the city has been hosting these community meetings. So once a month in a different neighborhood in Boston, they'll go into, a school auditorium or whatever, and they'll host a slide presentation by Boston 2024. And then at the end, people are allowed to ask questions. One of the slides that they've put up shows Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, and Atlanta, and it shows the supposed profits that they made, right? So Los Angeles, it's a total, side deviation, but they got the Olympics in a very different kind of a way. So in the system that they used, if there was a profit, it wouldn't apply here anyway. Salt Lake City, that was a pretty corrupt process, particularly before Mitt Romney got in there, so the numbers are kind of And with Atlanta, they keep saying Atlanta made $10 million, and it's like, okay, that was 0.001% of the total amount of money they spent, so all it would have taken is just a tiny swing in the other direction. Was it really worth all of that for $10 million? It's like Austin Powers with what's the name of the
Dr.
bad
Evil.
Yeah, it's like $1 million. That's what it reminds me of. And I'm like, how does this help anybody? I don't know.
Right.
So,
and you got to think those numbers are also
benefit.
very skewed to begin with. That they're looking at this at the most positive possible way without looking at the overall the negative sides of this. They're trying to put as much of a positive spin on this, and the best they can come up with is $10 million.
Yeah. In Atlanta. And, not, of course, mentioning all the displacement that happened there, how they put homeless people on buses and shipped them out of the city, not mentioning all of this other, side effect that happened. And, again, they're the ones that are making these stats. They're not being confirmed by an outside group. So, of course, they can say, oh, yeah, we made this profit. There's no one to verify that or double check it. And then if we look at other places, look at the corruption in the Beijing Olympics that was famous. Look at Sochi, which was just obscene. And then, right now they're building for the Rio Olympics. They're still displacing people forcefully from their favelas in Rio, and those people have no recourse. They just kind of have to take what they're given. Some of the Rio citizens are finally starting to get market rate for their homes. For the most part, though, they've just been shoved out and given pennies on the dollar based on what their property value is.
Unbelievable. I'm talking again to my friend Robin Jacks from NoBoston2024. You can find them at bostonagainstolympics.bid, on Twitter at no_Boston2024. Robin on Twitter is at Cock the Wagon. Yeah, I mean, actually, even on your site, at bostonagainstolympics.bid, you guys actually posted a photo slideshow of like all of these old Olympic venues that look. It looks like a post-apocalyptic landscape now. And it's really, I mean, like they go through the decades, and they're all just these like horribly abandoned. I mean, if you saw like zombies walking through the photo, you wouldn't actually be surprised. You're like, oh, this is The Walking Dead right here. It's just these. It's just how desolate these communities, and again, which goes to show it's like these things get abandoned. That's generally the history. These stadiums don't really get used that much anymore. They pretty much are just they're built and then they're crumbled to the ground, or they're even tore down to the ground and just left into a giant parking lot.
Right. Boston2024 claims that this won't happen. Of course, everyone always claims that this won't happen, right? No one wants to say, oh yeah, we're going to leave white elephants all over your city. White elephants is the term for abandoned structures created for an event such as this and left behind. So Boston claims that this won't happen. They also claim that this will be a sustainable green Olympics. And in order to build all of these structures, I don't know how that's possible. They also will then say that for like the Olympic Village and the really big venues, that they'll tear them down after. I don't know how that's green either. It's more of a carbon footprint for taking it apart. And I don't know. They say that this won't happen, but when I went to a community meeting last week for a park in my neighborhood, Franklin Park, this is a really famous park in the country. Frederick Law had built it. They're going to supposedly put the equestrian events, which there's 4 different, I think, equestrian events. Horse dressage is one of them, the biggest joke of the Olympics, and the pentathlon, the pentathlon it's like shooting, swimming, fencing, all these weird old-timey things. That's another, like, what is this? I don't understand. So that would be supposedly at Franklin Park. In order to have the pentathlon, they would have to build a swimming pool in Franklin Park. And they came to us like, hey, guys, you're going to get a pool. We're giving you guys a swimming pool. Like, we're 8 years old, and we're going to be like, cool. Awesome. It's so good. And everyone was like, we don't want a pool.
Well, let's examine some of. So on the site, you guys actually, the site's really great because you guys constantly update it pretty much every day with the news on this. Because again, this stuff is happening, most of it behind our backs. But you kind of examine. Let's talk about the economics behind this, because you guys actually break down the microeconomics compared to the macroeconomics of this, and they're both a horrible, horrible deal. So let's talk about the money and how this would theoretically be funded. Well,
they say that the money will all be private, that the events will all be privately funded. The Olympics will all come from private tax dollars. They emphasize this constantly. There is no way that they can prove this. Massachusetts will be on the hook for any overruns. So there's really no way that they can prove this. And they say that no tax money will be used, and then the next thing they do, every time they say this, is they show a slide, and it says, I think it's around $3 billion will be used for security funding. And where does that money come from? Federal taxes.